Most people believe belly fat is simply the result of eating too much. Too many calories. Too little exercise. So the solution seems obvious. Eat less. Move more. And the fat should disappear. But the human body doesn't lose fat in such a simple way. Because biologically speaking, not all body fat is the same. Some fat disappears quickly. Some fat burns slowly. And one specific type of fat, the fat stored around your stomach, is often the last fat your body is willing to burn. Today we're going to break down exactly why that happens. Inside your hormones. Inside your metabolism. And inside your fat cells themselves. Because once you understand how belly fat works, you'll realize something surprising. Your body isn't stubborn. It's strategic. The real purpose of body fat. To understand belly fat, we first need to understand why the body stores fat at all. Fat is not just extra weight. It's stored survival energy. For most of human history, food was unpredictable. Some days our ancestors ate well. Other days they found nothing. So the body evolved a simple strategy. Whenever extra energy appears, store it. And store it in places that are easy to access when needed. But here's where things become interesting. The body doesn't store fat randomly. Different areas of the body serve different metabolic roles. Fat stored in the arms and legs is often easier to release. But belly fat behaves very differently. Because belly fat is part of the body's emergency energy reserve. The two types of belly fat. When people talk about belly fat, they often imagine a single layer of fat under the skin. But in reality, there are two completely different types of fat in the abdominal area. The first is called subcutaneous fat. This is the fat you can pinch with your fingers. It sits just under the skin. The second type is visceral fat. This fat sits deeper inside the abdomen, surrounding organs like the liver and intestines. And metabolically, visceral fat behaves very differently. It's more hormonally active. It responds strongly to insulin. And it's far more connected to the body's internal energy regulation system. Which is why the body treats it differently. Why the body protects belly fat. One of the main reasons belly fat is harder to burn comes down to blood flow. Fat cells release stored energy through a process called lipolysis. But in order for fat to leave the cell, hormones have to reach it through the bloodstream. And studies show that blood flow to abdominal fat tissue is often lower than in other fat storage areas. Which means fat in this region is released more slowly. But blood flow is only part of the story. The bigger factor is something called fat cell receptors. The receptor battle inside fat cells. Fat cells contain special receptors that control whether fat is stored or released. Two of the most important are beta receptors and alpha receptors. Beta receptors encourage fat release. Alpha receptors block fat release. Think of beta receptors as unlocking fat storage. And alpha receptors as locking the door. Here's the problem. Belly fat contains a higher concentration of alpha receptors. Which means fat stored in the abdominal area is biologically harder to mobilize. Even when your body is burning fat overall, these cells resist letting their energy go. This is why stubborn fat areas often remain even after significant weight loss. The hormone that makes belly fat worse. Another major factor is insulin. Insulin is the hormone responsible for controlling blood sugar. Every time you eat carbohydrates, insulin rises. Its job is to move sugar out of the bloodstream and into cells. But insulin also sends another signal. It tells fat cells, store energy. Do not release it. And belly fat is particularly sensitive to insulin. Which means frequent spikes in insulin can make abdominal fat especially difficult to burn. This is why diets high in refined carbohydrates often lead to fat accumulation around the stomach. And why lowering insulin levels can make fat burning easier. Stress and belly fat. There is another hormone strongly connected to abdominal fat. Cortisol. Cortisol is the body's primary stress hormone. It rises during psychological stress, lack of sleep, and intense dieting. One of cortisol's effects is increasing fat storage around the abdomen. Scientists believe this happens because visceral fat can quickly supply energy during stressful situations. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes sense. If the body is under stress, it wants quick access to fuel. And storing fat around the organs provides that energy reserve. But in modern life, chronic stress can keep cortisol elevated, which encourages the body to keep storing fat in the belly. Why belly fat burns last? When people begin losing weight, the body usually burns fat in stages. First, it uses readily available energy stores. Fat from the arms. Fat from the face. Fat from the upper body. But stubborn fat areas like the lower abdomen often remain until later. This happens because the body prefers to burn easily accessible fat first. And as total body fat decreases, hormones gradually make stubborn fat more available. In other words, the body slowly works its way toward the deeper reserves. This is why many people notice belly fat shrinking only after weeks or months of consistent fat loss. The metabolic turning point. Interestingly, once body fat drops low enough, the hormonal environment changes. Insulin levels tend to fall. Fat-burning hormones like norepinephrine become more effective. Blood flow to fat tissue improves. And the alpha receptors that once blocked fat release become less dominant. At this point, the body finally begins tapping into stubborn abdominal fat stores. What once seemed impossible suddenly starts happening. The belly begins shrinking faster. The biggest mistake people make. Many people panic when belly fat refuses to disappear quickly. So they respond by doing something extreme. They crash diet. They slash calories aggressively. They add hours of cardio. But ironically, these strategies often increase stress hormones, which can make belly fat even more resistant. Fat loss works best when the body feels safe, not when it feels threatened. The real strategy for losing belly fat. So if belly fat is biologically resistant, what actually works? The key is improving the hormonal environment that controls fat release. This means lowering chronically high insulin levels, improving sleep quality, reducing chronic stress, and creating consistent periods where the body is allowed to burn stored energy. Over time, these signals gradually shift the body into a fat-burning state. And eventually, even stubborn abdominal fat begins to respond. The final insight. At the end of the day, your body isn't trying to make fat loss difficult. It's trying to keep you alive. Belly fat exists because your metabolism evolved in a world where food shortages were common. So the body protects its deepest energy reserves. But once you understand the biology behind it, something important becomes clear. Fat loss isn't about forcing your body. It's about sending the right signals. And when the signals are consistent, your metabolism eventually responds. Even the most stubborn fat cannot resist the laws of biology forever.